Hi everyone. So far we've created the front bearing cover, the side panel, and the back bearing cover. We've 3D printed the front bearing cover, so you have at least one, if not both, the versions of that you need. And now we need to 3D print our back bearing cover. The process is just like the front bearing cover, except this time I'm going to show you some more in-depth features of Prusa Slicer so you can become more of a power user of Slicer and get better prints. All right. First thing's always the same. We need to create a mesh file of our object. So I'm going to come over here to my bodies folder, find the back bearing cover, right click on it and do save as mesh. I'm going to leave the format as STL binary and millimeters the unit type. I can preview the mesh if I'd like. I can zoom in and kind of see all the different triangles. Here it's using 3,500 triangles to make this mesh with, so that's pretty crazy. And then we're going to just click OK. It's going to ask us where we want to save it to. This mesh file is totally temporary, so you can save it to the downloads folder on the computer, and when you log out, it'll be deleted. Or you can save it to the thumb drive that's on your computer. It should be called something like ENR 3A or 7C, or it's the same as the computer number that you're sitting at. So you can save it there. If you save it on the thumb drive, make sure if you don't already have a folder with your name on it, make a folder with your name on it. We don't want just a ton of random files sitting in there. And I'm going to leave it as back bearing cover here for me, and I'm going to just hit save. All right, so I've just created that mesh file. I can actually close out a Fusion 360 if I'd like, but I need to open up Prusa. So come over here and do a search for Prusa Slicer. There it is right there, and I'm going to open it up. Awesome. And the first thing you need to do, mine comes up automatically with all the settings in place. I don't think yours does. So if it doesn't say Prusa MKS3, MK3S Plus here, we need to click on the drop-down menu for the printer and do Add Remove Printers. And then we're going to choose Add Remove Presets. This Add Physical Printer would be to add a printer that was physically connected with a wire to your computer. None of our printers are connected that way, so we're going to do Add or Remove Presets. It's going to ask us to install some stuff. If it does, click Install. Mine didn't do it this time. Yours may. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that they're all unchecked. So this first top thing, MK4 family, are their newest awesome printers. Make sure those are unchecked. This is also a new printer. Make sure those are unchecked. The Mini family, we don't own any of the Minis. And the ones we own are these, MK3S and MK3S Plus. Make sure the 0.4 nozzle is selected. The nozzle says how big the opening is where the plastic comes out. So this is the 0.4 is what we use. And then go ahead and hit finish. Or not finish, sorry, don't do that. Hit next. If you hit finish, you've got to go back in and do this over again. And then hit next. We don't have any of these printers. We don't have any of these printers. We don't have any custom printers, and now we're on filament. First thing I want you to do here is click on None. That'll erase all of the filament options. We only print with one type of plastic here. It's called PETG. The reason we do that is PETG is super strong and it's really low odor. So there's almost no odor at all. And when you've got 20 printers going at the same time, you don't want something that's going to make the room really stinky and smell like melted plastic. So PETG is what we've got, and then we're going to use generic PETG. And we're going to click on the generic button. Our brand of PETG isn't in this list yet. I'm sure it will be at some point. At this point, we're ready to hit finish. And what should pop up is generic PETG here and the Prusa MK3S, MK3S Plus. If you slice it for the wrong printer, you won't get a very good print usually. So make sure you're getting the right printer. You have to have the right plastic. Each plastic melts at a different temperature. So if you have the wrong plastic here, the plastic won't melt properly, it won't stick and adhere, it'll just be a big mess. So make sure you always have generic PETG here. And then the layer height. This is something you can choose. So on here at 0.3, layer height refers to, so a 3D printer prints a layer of plastic, moves up a tiny bit and prints the next layer, next layer, next layer, next layer, all the way up to the top. Layer height refers to how thick each layer is. The thicker the layer height, the faster the print, because there'll be fewer layers to get to the top of your print. The only problem with it is if you have a lot of really fine detail, like the face of something or just something with lots of little parts and pieces and things on it, you're going to lose a little bit of that detail because it's going to be a thick layer height. So in that case, I would use 0.2. 0.2 works great. It takes a lot longer than 0.3 because you're making like 60% more layers. So it's going to take more time to do that. I have used 0.15 with some success. The smaller the layer height, the longer the print, and the more possibility there is for there to be a problem sometime during the print that makes it fail. So I don't like using these really ultra detailed ones. I've tried some of these really like the 0.1 and 0.07 and 0.05, but I've not gotten a print to work yet. I think you need to get the printer really tuned and working fantastically well before you drop to those really low, really small layer heights. And ours just aren't tuned that well, to be honest with you. All right, so my advice to you is stay with the 0.2 or 0.3. If you want to try the 0.15, but don't go to the 0.1, 0.07, 0.05. Those are going to be failed prints almost for sure. Okay, so that's just a quick thing. I'm going to use 0.3 draft. For all of the stuff we're building for our robot, none of it has super fine detail, just like shapes on that, is like circles and all that kind of easy stuff. Next thing I want to do is I want to bring my file in. So I'm going to go File, Import. I'm going to choose this first one, which will import any kind of mesh file that's out there. And I'm going to find my bearing cover. For me, it was in the Downloads folder. It came up right away. Now notice when it brings it in standing up on its side. Well, this would be insane to print it this way. So we want to put it flat on a side. We have two sides to choose from. We can put it flat on the face, or we can put it flat on the back side. And if we put it flat on the back side, notice how this whole section in the middle here, where the bearing goes, it's going to be printing plastic over air here. And it's going to be hard for that print to come out really nice and clean. And this is a place we really want it to be clean. That's where our bearing is going to fit into. So I'm actually going to print that facing up so there's no problems with that. But if I print this side down, these flat parts here that are off the surface are going to not print very cleanly. And in the end, I don't really care if that doesn't print very cleanly. The screw head's going to go over it and it's going to be just fine in the end. So I'm going to do a face down. I'm going to choose this face down. And now I'm just going to, I need 4 of these for my robot, 2 for each side of the robot. So you're going to be printing 2 of these. Your partner should print the other 2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come up here I'm going to highlight my object here. And I'm going to come up here to the copy button. That makes a copy of it. I'm going to come here to the paste, and that makes a second version of it. Then I'm going to do Control A to highlight all of them. And now I'm going to hit the auto arrange button, which is right up here, and I can arrange them. Now I can also, if I didn't like where that was, I can just move them around, and they'll move around on the tray. I can also do things like rotate them. So if I turn on this button over here, the rotate button, I can rotate them in any direction I want. Be really careful about rotating them a little bit. Sometimes people make this mistake, and they'll rotate it a little bit off the plate, and now it can't print. So make sure you're keeping it flat. And the way to get it flat is simply to click on the object, choose place on face, and then you can see it, put it right back down on the face. Awesome. So now we've got 2 of them. I'm going to come back up. I'm going to do Control A to get all of them again. I'm going to do the auto arrange again. The only time I arrange it manually is when the auto arrange spreads them out so much I can't fit everything I want on the print bed, and I can scooch them a little closer together with manually moving them around. All right, now let's slice. So I'm going to slice this with just the standard 0.3 settings. Some more things over here. Supports. These are things that they print up little like thin fingers up to support material when it's an overhang situation where it won't all print well. We'll learn about supports later. The infill. I'll show you what infill is. So if I arrow down, now that I've sliced, I can arrow down through each layer. This part in here is called infill. So this infill is so that you don't have to waste plastic making it a solid chunk of plastic. It just creates these structure on the inside. I can change the infill. Let's make it up to 70%. When I do that, notice a bunch of it disappeared because it's sliced for 15%. I have to slice it over again to get that 70%. And now you can see it's that same honeycomb shape or that same grid shape, but it is now just a whole bunch more of it. So the more infill you have, the stronger your part will be, but that strength is sort of falls away fast. So the difference between 10% infill and say 20 and 25% is a significant increase in strength. But the difference between 20 and 50 is a really small, and then like 50 and 70 is like almost no difference in strength, but lots of wasted plastic. So we try to keep our infills, unless the part is really small and requires a lot of strength, we keep our infills low in that sort of 25 to 15 to 25% range. And I'm going to reslice it now at 25%. And down here you can see there's tons of cool information. So it tells you how many grams of filament you use, and 1 gram is a very small amount of filament. And this is the cost of it. So this is a 33-cent part, and it's going to take 40 minutes to print with this infill pattern. Notice if I pop it back up to 70 and reslice it, it takes 48 minutes instead, so it takes a lot longer to print, which makes sense, and it costs 40 cents instead of 33 cents. All right, so I'm going to bring this back down to 25%. Now I'm going to play around with some more infill stuff. I'm going to reslice it. I'm going to show you this menu up here. So go to Print Settings, and if you might be on Simple Mode, which means you only see these green ones, go ahead and click yourself over here to Advanced Mode. There's no problem with being in advanced. You can even click the expert. It'll just show you a few extra things that you can play around with. You can't break the printers, but you can ruin your print. So feel free to explore this for as long or as much as you want. I'm going to show you a few things. The layer height here is 0.3 like we had said. Then this is the first layer height. It's different from the rest of them. Don't worry about that. These are the number of perimeters. So if I increase, let's increase this up to a ridiculous number of 10. I want to see what this does. So I'm going to come back here to platter. And again, it disappeared because I need to reslice it. And just slice it again. And you can see what it does. Instead of doing 2 outside edges, it does 10 of them, which is overkill. So I'm going to go back to Print Settings, change that back down to 2. And then let's see, what else do we want? No, all of these are more advanced features. We're not going to worry about it. And then infill. So we're going to do infill right now. There's that same 25% from above, so you can change from here as well. The fill patterns what I want to show you right now. So there's a bunch of fill patterns that are really cool. My favorite one is gyroid. Let's try that one first. So I'm going to choose gyroid, go back to the platter up here, and notice it's gone again because I need to reslice it. I changed the perimeters and the gyroid. So gyroid looks like this. Notice we're back down to just 2 perimeters, an outside perimeter and 1 inside perimeter. The gyroid oscillates back and forth. So it makes a wavy pattern, and then it rotates that wavy pattern 90 degrees and makes another one. So you get this really cool, really strong infill pattern to it, which is really neat looking. With some of the transparent prints, you can actually see the pattern underneath. All right, print settings, infill. I think that's all. Ooh, one last one I wanted to show you was lightning. I want everybody to see lightning. I'm going to choose lightning here, then I'm going to go back to the platter, and I'm going to slice now. So what lightning is, it's a super minimal way to do infill. So you can see it's not making very much infill until the last second when it needs it for support. Lightning works really well if you've got a big hollow object. It doesn't have to be like strong. You can use lightning to do the infill and save tons of plastic. Let me show you an example. I printed off this pedestal, and this thing would use a ton of plastic if the infill was set, because all of it would be full. Instead, it uses very little infill. They're just lightning bolts of infill that go up to support the top, and that's it. And it cut the cost down. I think like 60% less plastic was used. So that's a good thing. In this part, lightning's not going to be good because we want this part to be strong. It's a structural part. So I'm going to come back to print settings, And I'm going to switch it back over to gyroid, which is my favorite. Go to platter and slice now. Once I've got all those slices done, I am ready to 3D print this. Well, actually, let me show you one more thing. Let's get a feel for it. Let's do some supports. So right here, I can see that our supports are all, we're going to need some supports because when we get to this layer, right here, it's going to try and support, it's going to try and print these circles out over empty space. And that is not going to work very well printing that. So what we're going to do is go back to the pre-slice, the platter, which is over here, 3D editor view. And we're going to, I'm going to delete one of these as well. And we're going to put some supports here. And we're going to paint on, so right now we have to be in our advanced or expert mode, either one. Highlight my object, choose the paintbrush. And what this does is we're painting on exactly where we want Prusa to put the supports. So we're going to say, hey, let's use the brush, and we're going to come in here, and I don't like that. Let's not do that way. Let's do the Smart Fill one. It's a little easier. Right there, I'm going to click on these circles for infill support. All right, now once I have that done, I'm going to click off of this paintbrush onto anything else. Well, not that one, that was confusing looking. And then I'm going to come over here and say supports. It says none. I'm going to say for enforcers only. I don't know why they call them support enforcers, but that's what they call them. And now I'm going to re-slice this and we'll see what it does differently. See how now it's built in this green stuff? This green stuff will break away at the end and it's going to support that screw hole to be printed cleanly instead of kind of rough. You can compare it to your other one and see how it goes. Now I did make a mistake here. I actually need to go back in here and make a second copy of this. So I'm going to go back to the platter view. I'm going to have that highlighted. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to Control A to select everything and then arrange them and then slice now. Awesome. There's supports. Notice because I copy and pasted it after I added the supports are already on the second version. All right, awesome, my friends. That does it for us. That was a really long video. I apologize. Hopefully you learned a lot about slicing and printing and you're ready to rock and roll. Have fun.